So I'm welcoming you all on behalf of the team of Building Beyond Borders to this lecture this evening. We said we would start at 7:30. We have a bit over 100 people now, so welcome everyone. Basically, this lecture, it's a small teaser, let's say, slash kickoff of our Building Beyond Borders program. So Building Beyond Borders, it's a postgraduate certificate that will act around the architecture of Extr-a-ction this year. So you see this series of lectures this evening as a small teaser, as a small idea, which topics we will touch in this postgraduate. So I will briefly introduce what we're doing there, and then we will go on to the lectures, and give me around 2-3 minutes. So briefly, just so that you all understand, the idea of the postgraduate certificate is to enhance knowledge and push action towards regenerative and distributive design and building processes. What we are doing there, it's around international collaborations, it's around low-tech, around scarce resources. So topics that we should act on nowadays, on responsible building, on positive environmental impact, and on high social return. These are core elements within this postgraduate. The idea is that it's an act and learn program. So we will do next year's edition as last time with graduates and professionals, but every edition has a special focus. And basically in the end, you can do a self-designed real-life project. So last edition, we did a design and build project in Oulet Merzouk in Morocco. Well, this year, we will also work with making prototypes, with doing workshops, with courses, but we will stay closer to home, to the home of the University of Hasselt. So we will work in the context of Brussels. That's the next edition. And there we opted for the name of Architecture of Extr-a-ctions. I will play a small video to give you a small teaser of the different topics. So the idea of the next edition of Building Beyond Borders is that it's again an active studio where we make use of urban harvesting, where we will start to learn local materials and work with local craftsmen as well, just as next edition. Therefore, we're proud to announce our partners, basically, for this year, which will give a lecture this evening. We'll start with Rotor DC. So Lionel Billet will come for Rotor DC. DC standing for Deconstruction and Consulting. So they are leading the road of salvaging and reusing building materials within the context of Brussels. And Lionel is one of the founders, originally a bioengineer, who will explain you what their vision is and introduce the way they're working and acting within the context of Brussels nowadays. Secondly, there will be Nicolas Koekelbergs from BC Materials, my colleague as well. So we're both working at BC Materials in the context of geosourcing. What we're doing there, it's actually transformation of excavation of materials from building sites. So it's excavations material that we turn into building materials. So Nicolas will briefly introduce you how we act upon this. And lastly, there is Stefan Kampelman from Sonian Wood Coop. He will introduce you the idea of Sonian Wood Coop as an enterprise, as a company, who want to keep the wood of the Sonian forest local. Stefan has a PhD in ecological economy, but most of all now he's an entrepreneur and a founder of Sonian Wood Coop. So I will pass on the words to Lionel. Enjoy the lecture.
Good evening, everyone. So I will give a few words of explanation about who we are and what we do. At Rotor, we let's say that Rotor started very small in 2005, and in the beginning it was a group of people, of friends, basically wanting to do projects together, and there was a strong interest from the beginning in the way materials are used in the industry and in the building sector, and especially with the focus on questions of obsolescence. So how does products and buildings and materials become obsolescent? Why do we discard them? Why do we produce waste in the first place? And also to understand where the material come from and how they are used by the industry. So in the beginning, the Rotor as a practice was quite explorative. We spent in the first years of Rotor, we spent a lot of time visiting factories, visiting building sites, visiting recycling plants, just asking questions, sometimes spending 1, 2, or 3 hours with the people working at these places to just understand what's this special relationship that the industry and the building sector in particular has with materials. And in the end, progressively, Rotor as a project became organized more as a company, let's say, and so it means we were able to to pay ourselves for our job, but we also had to develop some services or activities that on one hand fit with our centers of interest, but on the other side could allow us to develop an economic project. And in this process, we progressively became somehow experts in the field of reclaiming building materials. And in the beginning, we thought we would just act as a kind of a consultancy or research unit. So we would just know about the topic, but without becoming salvage dealers ourselves. But at a certain point, we did this step into the practical reclamation, and that was around 2014, and we created a separate company called Rotor DC. So here on this slide, you see a kind of a landscape of the activities we have right now. So on one hand, you have Rotor as a design studio and as a research unit. It's still active. And on the other side, we have Rotor DC, who is who has an activity in reclaiming and selling salvaged materials. And at the moment we work with almost 30 people. Not everyone works full time, but it's still a big team. And we're based in Brussels, and our colleagues have different backgrounds. So some of them are architects, other ones are we have engineers, we have artists, we have people who learn by doing. So we have different disciplines. We even have a jurist, so someone trained as a lawyer in the team right now. If one day you come and visit us in Brussels, this is the place where you would come. We are at the moment based in a former factory. It used to be a chocolate factory, by the way, and we occupy the outdoor space you see here, but also a part of the warehouse that we share with other initiatives. And it's maybe a specificity. Well, let's say that from 2005 to 2013, we just had a few tables and chairs and computers, and it was enough to do what we were doing. And then from the moment we started to store materials, we quickly had to invest in a lot of infrastructure. So it was let's say this little change in strategic direction had direct implications in how much hardware and how much square meters we needed to have. So it's the type of activity we do require a lot of space and a lot of stuff to be managed. Well, now if we go inside, yeah, there is a part of the work that is about keeping this warehouse. We also have a part of the building that we use as a showroom, so that people and clients can come and look at materials and make choices for their design based on what they find. And of course, we have to manage a lot of transit of materials incoming and outgoing. The type of materials we focus on is well, it's at the moment we mostly work with finishing materials. So we would not reclaim bricks or beams or concrete, but we would either focus on everything that is finishing the interiors or the outsides of buildings. Think about floorings, ceilings, doors, furniture, lighting fixtures, sanitary equipments, and so on. And from time to time, we also experiment. It's actually a process where we well, if we had made a plan 10 years ago about what we would do today, I think the image would be completely different than what we actually do. So the way we go forward is actually by a lot of trial and error. So there in the very beginning, when we launched Rotor DC, the way we choose the material we would reclaim was very opportunistic. When we had the opportunity to go inside the building, we would just take everything we thought was interesting, and afterwards we would see what works and what doesn't work. Right now, with a few years of experience, we begin to have a more systematic approach where we kind of focus on a number of types of materials that we begin to know well, in order to not only get them in our warehouse, but also to offer a certain level of service that you can expect from building material dealers. So somehow, if we an ambition we have now is to be able to provide high quality second-hand materials with the kind of service you would expect from a dealer of new products. And when you say it like that, it sounds like a quite easy or simple idea, but when you need to put this into practice, it's a serious challenge. Actually, it's a process we sometimes compare to a form of traduction. So of translation. So we start from materials that are in a very that are surrounded with uncertainties. If you look at these doors, they are located on the 11th floor of a to-be renovated office building. Well, you have to estimate the costs of taking them on the ground floor. You have to check if they are fireproof or not. You have to know if the fireproof attest is still valid or not. you have to you don't know if you have someone to take it in the end. You have to find a way to avoid scratches on the door during dismantlings, otherwise they would lose value, etc., etc. So the material as it is in a building is very far from a situation where it's ready to be used by the new project. So what we do is somehow to organize this process of extraction in order to make it look like a product. What does it mean? It means we once we have it in stock, we can we know the quantities exactly, we know the dimensions, we have a description of the product. People can come and look at it. They can take a few weeks to think about it. We have also different pieces of hardware they can choose to install on the door and so on. So this whole trajectory is what we want to focus on, and we think it's a condition to be able to really exploit this urban mine as well. It's a metaphor you probably already heard a lot, but the city is nowadays should be considered as a mine of material. It's like the new mine, and it's also the topic of this of this evening actually. But in order to be able to exploit this mine, we need to to be smart and invent new ways to deliver materials. Here is it's just one example of a building, of a renovation project, like you see many in a city like Brussels. Here is it's the renovation of an office building from the end of the 60s. It was built in 68. So the year when the first man landed on the moon for the first time, this building landed in Brussels, in the middle of the historic city center. But now, 50 years later, the building is somehow ripe for a deep renovation. And so, as you see, only the concrete structure remains, with a few other details. But this is considered as a rather preserving way to renovate this kind of offices building from the 70s. So everything from the interiors, but also the facade, the roofs, basically everything except the concrete is being removed. So for such a project, there are around 50,000 tons of materials that are getting extracted, and most of it is treated as waste. So it's been sorted. It will be recycled, but in a destructive way. The concrete is crushed into granulates. The metals are being smelted and recycled. The wood is being shredded, but a small fraction can be reclaimed. In this precise situation, it's only 1% in mass that we could extract for reuse as such. So the way the way reuse is defined is often as a process where a product or a building material is used a second time without being transformed or through very light transformation efforts. So that's how we make the difference with recycling. If you look at this ventilation group that we reclaimed from the Philips Tower, so from this building, we if you recycle that, you have 1 ton of steel and a few other metals. But if you reclaim it as a product, you have ventilation group, so you have to still make sure it's working, and And in this specific situation, we had to involve a company who is used to install this type of large ventilation groups in order to care for dismantling. So the ones who install are sometimes the best persons to dismantle as well. Well, another example coming from the same project is the reclamation of these large slabs of blue limestone that would be well, they will be reintegrated in the same project, but on another place. So this is the pictures I show here come from so the project is called Multi. It's a project from a private developer called Whitewood, and they together with architects Konix RDBM, they decided to integrate a part, let's say a larger share of reclaimed materials than what is done usually. So it's a project we are following from the beginning, and we kind of advised the project team so they could apply these principles. So what you see here is actually work that is, well, for this specific slabs in stone, it's a work that was being realized by the regular demolition contractor, but after a lot of studies about how this should be done in a proper way. So it's very it looks like something simple, but it's actually very unusual in nowadays building practices. Of course, it wasn't always like that. So as you know, reusing building materials is, if you look at a broader historic perspective, reusing building materials is something quite normal. So we are now in a kind of historic exception where reuse is a marginal practice, but from as long as human beings build stuff, materials are being reclaimed and reused. We find a lot of traces of this kind of practices in in historic documents. Here, what you see here is in the 18th century, the former palace of Charles Quint, so Charles V, was demolished in Brussels on the location where you have the Royal Park right now. And the small advertisement you see here was published back then, and it says, "We will sell publicly next Tuesday at 2 o'clock in the park of Brussels, a large quantity of doors, windows, stairs, carpentry wood, etc., coming from the demolition of the so-called house of Charles V." So, and we find plenty of similar examples. I could give you a lecture of 1 hour just on this type of examples. So somehow it's a practice that we lost, and we think now that it needs to be that it needs to find a new central place in the building practices. One of the reasons why we want to go back to this kind of reuse is that it has really impressive environmental advantages. If you compare the environmental impact linked to the production of a new product and the impact of the reclamation or the preparation of a second-hand equivalent product, the difference is really impressive. So here on the chart you see, well, it's an LCA, so life cycle analysis, taking different types of impacts into account, and you see that the reclaimed floor tiles in ceramics have an environmental impact that is like 85% lower. So it's somehow a kind of radically sustainable material, and the reason of this difference is simply because producing stuff has a large impact. So the fact that that new tiles has to be cooked at a really high temperature with fossil fuels, and the fact the resource has to be extracted and processed in a heavy way with chemicals and so on, makes that the production is really high in terms of impact, a lot more than transport and etc. Well, and the example of the tile is maybe an example where the reclamation process is relatively heavy, but still it's nothing in comparison with the production of new ones. So here you see a few pictures of our processes. So the dismantling is a very manual process, but then to remove the residues of mortar on the tiles, we use a bath of an acidic solution, kind of a very concentrated vinaigrette, if you want, so an acetic acid, in order to dilute the residues of mortar, and so we get a result that is as good as new, or better. Well, another reason we want to we think reuse is interesting. It's because it somehow preserve or transport an embodied, what we could call the embodied culture of materials. So the materials from another time or from specific buildings, or that were very carefully chosen by designers back then, can somehow add an extra narrative layer in the projects we install them in. It's also an activity that has the potential to create jobs, simply because the material has more value when you keep it intact instead of crushing it, and also because dismantling carefully takes a lot of time in comparison with the standard way of demolition. So that's just a summary of what I just said. And I also wanted to quickly show you a few images of projects that integrated reclaimed materials. So in the coming images, the projects are not always from us. So some of the projects are from our clients who bought our materials, and other ones were designed by Rotor. This is an example of a small-scale cafe, actually, that was realized with a lot of materials coming from Rotor DC. Well, what we really like in this project is that it's for us the perfect example of the kind of shift in a design attitude you need to have when you work with reclaimed materials, is that you somehow have to start from the materials in order to go towards the project. So instead of drawing something on a white paper and then looking in a catalog to find the suitable products, here you first have to kind of fall in love with materials, and then you try to understand what they want to do or what they want to be, and your project appears in this way. That's another project of well, I should cite the authors. So this is a project from Frank Stable in Antwerp, and this is another project in Ghent from Doorzon Architecten for a grocery. And the floorings are made out of reclaimed tiles. But what is interesting is that they decided to not only reuse the tiles, but also to reuse a pattern. So the pattern they used here for the floor is an exact copy of the building, a university building from the 30s, where these tiles come from. And they also add an extra layer to this attitude, because they on the 20 patterns they could have chosen in the building of origin, they choose the one that integrates a part of broken pieces. And this was a way to also valorize the tiles that we would break anyway during the dismantling process. So it's also this type of dialogue between design and the characteristics of the material that are for us super interesting.
Sorry, Lionel, to intervene. I would just say take another 3-4 minutes in order to finish it up, so that we're ready for the next one. Okay. It's super interesting though, so don't go too fast.
Okay. Well, but the rest is quite self-explanatory. I think that's a small project we did ourselves. So the design and the building was done by us, and almost everything you see are reclaimed materials or products that were like from dead stocks or errors in deliveries. This is another project from Rotor where one of the things we try to do through this type of project is to go to a really high level of details. So what you see here is also, for the most part, reclaimed materials, but we want to show that we can realize something very finished and qualitative, also with second-hand products. Well, and that's another case that is for us a kind of somehow a kind of next step in terms of material parsimony. It's a project in Paris. We had to refurbish a huge surface of a building, but with a ridiculously small budget. And one of the interventions was in this room. We only lightly changed the inclination of a ceiling in order to bring more sunlight, and this was it. So with an intervention with zero material, we could create something new and a space with a higher quality. Maybe I will finish on this image.
Hello everyone. I will do the second lecture. I'm Nicolas Kuckelbergs. I'm co-founder of BC Architect Studies and Materials. And also I'm a teacher at Building Beyond Borders. So I'm very happy to present you what we're doing with BC Materials. So as I said, BC Materials is a new company. It's only 2 years old. It's a spin-off of BC Architect and Studies, and it's actually born through activities that we were doing inside BC Architect and Studies. We, at a certain moment, gained some experience in building with raw earth, not baked, just using the material excavations from a certain place in order to make bricks, in order to make ram dirt, in order to make plasters. And by doing those, this experience, we started to do some consultancy also for other architects. And at certain moments, we decided that it was time to start a spin-off, BC Materials, in order to divide those activities. So actually, BC Architect and Studies is a company doing architecture and research, and BC Materials is selling products, selling building materials. Because I don't have so much time, I will not show you this video, but I really encourage you to have a look if you didn't see it yet. This is actually my personal first encounter with raw earth. It was 10 years ago in Burundi, where I actually learned how to build with earth, where we experienced that, because we discovered that it was actually for there the most logic material that we could use. And back from this experience of more than 10 years ago now, we started to do different projects, and we started to use raw earth also in Belgium. And we discovered actually that using that material had a very beneficial way for the construction sector, because I want to show you this slide again, because it's quite important to know as architects that or builders that construction sector is one of the most polluting sector of the world. It's the second one actually. So one third of the total CO2 emissions. It's due to the construction sector. 40% of the resource extraction, 1/3 of the air pollution, and 30% of the total waste. So it's we are very we have to act towards that. It's very important to think about our practice, and I think Lionel explained really well how they are doing that. Well, we decided to propose actually to use a material that we have been using also for many years. Actually, the whole humankind, we were using raw earth to build our houses, build our buildings, and it's something that we have forgotten only, I think, 150 years ago during the industrialization. So what does it mean building with earth? It's just digging a hole, making bricks in order to make walls, using that building, and then when you don't want to use the building, you can just disassemble the building, putting back this earth, this soil to the earth, or to redo exactly the same material. So that makes these materials a very circular material, material that you can endlessly reuse. So, like I said, it's what we call circular in its destiny. We can reuse that materials. It has also a zero emission footprint, zero pollution, and it's very abundant. You by using raw earth, you can find earth almost everywhere in the world. So you don't have to wash the sands like you have with concrete in order to make a good materials. You can just use the soils as it is. Sometimes you have to add some other type of soil to make a good combination in a strong material, performant material, but you don't have to do many transformation to the material. And what we are also doing with BC materials is we make it also circular from its origin. So of course, but I will explain that in the second slide. So yeah, also important to say that building with earth makes a very healthy interior. So you can by building with earth mitigate electromagnetic radiation, but will also help to regulate the indoor humidity of a space. So that's something fantastic. It's quite natural. When you have too much moisture, the moisture goes into the earth bricks or the earth plaster, and has this high capacity to absorb that and to restore it when it's too dry. So to come back to that fact that we were using, that BC Materials is using earth from excavations, I was explaining that actually we are building with not only the earth coming from one specific site. We did that, for example, in Burundi, but many other projects also in Belgium, where we say, okay, at that space we would like to use earth bricks, and then we, for example, investigate what are the potential earth coming from the site that we could reformulate in order to make earth bricks or other type of materials. But we wanted to have also one dedicated place in Brussels where we could actually make stock productions, because not every project has this scale where you can do all this study also of characterizing a type of soil in order to transform it into building materials. Because I said it's quite easy, but it asks, of course, in order to to give some guarantee to a client or to an architect, you have to declare those performance. And this we decided to work with one certain flux of earth coming from Brussels to give you an idea of the city of Brussels. Has excavations over 2 million tons of soils been excavated every year. And most of the time, this earth, they are first going to a temporary storage close to the city. For example, you have one big one in Grimbergen, close to Brussels. And then those type of earths there, they're waiting actually to find the cheapest place where they can be filling or making some hills where they could actually dump them. And most of the time, earth ends in earth from Brussels ends in filling quarries in the south of the country, in the Walloon, for example, where people, the quarry owners, earn more money actually of filling them the quarries instead of exploiting the quarry and making. And then you can ask the question, okay, BC Materials is using the soils of Brussels, but is it a good soil? First of all, I want to say that we don't use any polluted soil, so that's something we are very strict, of course. Every soils actually need to be tested. I think from on top of 300 cubic meter being excavated from a certain construction site. Soils need to be tested in order to know if it's polluted or not. So the polluted one, they go to places in order to be depolluted. We use only like soils that are, let's say, virgin, never been touched by humans or air. And in Brussels, what you can see on this slide, for example, this is a section through the whole city of Brussels, where in the you have the valley of the canal. And the yellow part is the sand, Brussels sand. It's one of the ingredients we use the most in almost all our materials that we're producing in Brussels. And then you have this pink part. It's Ypres clay. It's a type of clay. The clay is for our materials that we're making is our binder. It's actually the cement, let's say, or the lime of our materials. So this pink color, it's the Ypres clay that we are using in certain ways, but as you can see, it's quite deep, so it's not happening quite often that construction sites are going so deep in order that we can use those. But we are lucky to have another type of clay that we're using. It's called loam. In Flemish, it's leem. It's a silty clay soil that we're using as a binder for many of our materials. So here's some pictures of construction sites. Where you see the yellow cranes of the Rotor. For the one knowing a little bit Brussels, the Rotor is the biggest company actually excavating in Brussels. I think they have 90% of the market of excavation, and also of demolitions. And here you see a construction site in Uccle, where you see on the right side this Brussels sand, is quite yellow sand. For the maybe you saw that on old houses, row houses in Brussels, the plaster was made with that sand, with not clay as a binder, with lime, and sometimes also reinforced with fibers of horse hair. Well, this is the same sand that we're using. And here, more spectacular, a deep construction, a deep hole for a bassin, how do you call it? A flooding basin, where they have been digging up to 20 meters depth. And so we were here lucky to use that gray, bluey clay, Ypres clay. And in some of the materials, we need also to use other type of aggregates, mostly for ram dirt. Ram dirt. I will show you some picture of what it is. It's kind of let's say a clay concrete, and as in concrete, we need some bigger gravels in order to make the skeleton of our materials. And yeah, we try to avoid to use gravel coming from the river, so we use recycled concrete that has been crushed into this type of gravels. And those are, let's say, the main ingredients that we mine or extract from the city, and that we bring to our workspace that you can see. It's a temporary shed that we have been building because the harbor of Brussels is allowing us to stay there for 5 years in order to start up our activities and then to find a final place where we could been doing our activity on a more permanent way. And so as you can see, you have those loading bays where we for the moment, I think it's 1 or 2 trucks every month of 25 tons that is coming from the Meuters. Of course, we don't have to pay for the earth coming. Eventually, in a certain future, if you would have every day a truck coming, we could even ask money for that. But for the moment, we are already happy that the Meuter is bringing it to us. And inside that shed, we have a very multifunctional space where, on demand, we produce or bricks, or plasters, or rendered mixes. So as said, those are the 3 products that we are producing. We have the briquette. This is compressed earth bricks of, for the moment, 14 centimeters on 29 centimeters and 9 centimeters height. But we will have different type of formats also that we will be putting on the market. We have also the Bruxellaire. It's a base coat plaster that could also be used as a finishing plasters in 4 colors. And then we have the Castage, that is the rendered mix that we also have in 3 colors. Of course, in order to be selling those materials, we are also working with distributors on different places in Belgium that sell our materials. We have to condition them in a normal way. So we use big bags, pallets, and paper bags, or in order to condition on materials and to put them on the market, to make the contractor as easy as possible in order to use our materials. So here you see the briquettes. Here it's a funny picture. It was a briquette production that we made not in our workspace in Brussels, but that we did in Antwerp. So for that specific construction site, I have a video of that. We will send you the link also in the chat. We actually brought the machinery that is all mobile that we have in order to be producing next to this regional house in Antwerp that has been built with the compressed earth bricks, with the earth coming from the place. So there, in order to keep the transport as short as possible and to have a low carbon footprint, we decided to bring the machinery close to the place where we've been extracting the earth, and also been using the materials instead of using, of course, the earth from there, bring it back to our workspace and bring it back to the construction site, what actually normal factories are doing. So this is the video that Jasper just shared to you in the chat room. And then we have the Bruxellaire. This is actually a plaster. It's very, very similar in applying as a gypsum plaster. It's the only difference is that you have to apply it in 2 layers, but it's it directly have the color also that you could that you have as a finishing. So you don't have to paint it. That's why we made 4 type of colors. And so once it's applied on the wall, the same way that you could apply a gypsum plaster or cement plaster, with some small different tips and tricks, of course, but very, very easy to apply for someone that is applying earth plasters, normal plasters. And then it can be sponged or been worked out in order to create a very beautiful and strong finishing. So here you see, for example, a picture of my sleeping room where we used the earth. You can see on the zoom in on the right side that when you sponge it, you can see the gravels or the small pebbles of the sand being visible. So you have something with a lot of character. It's I think way more beautiful than a white wall just painted. It's also super easy to repair, and that's something that's very nice with with a white wall. When you hit a wall, you need to repaint the whole wall because you see this stain. Well, here you can just put a little bit of materials and with a sponge just make disappear the stain or the hole that you could have made. Here you see the gray plaster that has been applied in our showroom. If you want to visit us, you're free to come. Just send us an email and then we can show you our showroom. And then, of course, in order to operate and to operate well and to guarantee a material, we are following certain norms. Unfortunately, for the moment, we don't have Belgian norms or European norms in order to declare the performance of the materials we are making. So we are following the German norms, the DIN norms, that are being developed just right after the Second World War, because Germany needed to rebuild quite fast after the bombing of the Second World War, and so that's why they made this DIN norm about Lehmbauregel for bricks, for mortar, and for plasters. And so we, of course, those norms have been updated, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, and so we follow them in order to declare the performance of materials, and in order for architects, to specify the performance and to put it in the bill of quantities for public tendering and so forth. And for the moment, we work also with CSTC, WTCB, that is the BRI, the Belgian Regulation Institute, in order to translate it, those norms to the Belgium context. And finally, in order to finish, the castage, the ram dirt mix that is been already, it's always made on the moment you want to use it, because we already put it, we mix it to the right moisture that you need in order to do 2 things. You can make walls with it. So it's really like let's say a clay concrete. So you just have to build a formwork. Back in the days, they were using wooden formwork. But now we use and contractor use DOCA formworks, or let's say system formworks that you can rent and that you can easily mount and disassemble. It's very strong also for ram dirt, and that's quite important because we even have more forces coming on the formwork than what we would have with pouring concrete. So it's very important to have a very strong formwork. So the good thing with this ram dirt is that you can make monolithic shapes. So you first design the wall or the object that you want to make, and then you translate it to the negative, the formwork, and then you ram it in layers of 8 centimeters. So for example, pouring 15 centimeters become 8 centimeters. Here you see a picture of a wall that we did in Tirlemont. and that Lemniscat was doing. Here you see a watching tower that was designed by Gauw de Lineal, an architecture office in Limburg, and where BC Materials was asked in order to prepare the mix together with Crater back in the days. So the mixture made of that specific watching towers is all the resource that you could find in Limburg. It was not possible to use the earth from the specific construction site there because it was all different, not homogeneous type of earth. So we worked with different quarries and make the rammed earth mixture. And also BC Materials had to train the contractor in order to make the construction. Here you see the wall of 15-meter height in rammed earth. So it was kind of a performance, I would say, in order to show that without any cement or lime, you can build really, really high with rammed earth, following the Eurocode and the norms of the Belgium regulation in order to make something performance. But of course, those type of big construction in rammed earth is sometimes quite expensive because it has a lot of craft also. And so what BC Materials for the moment selling most, I would say, is the mix in order to make counters, make smaller objects. Here you see, for example, a counter that we did in Bokkerijk, where it became the interior of a bakery. And finally, it's also possible to do rammed earth flooring that you actually pull like you would do a shop of cement, and then it's been compacting with this type of compacting vibrating machine that they use for the road. And then when you compact the earth, you can leave it as it is, and then finishing with wax finishing. And then it has this very earthy effect. It's very, very beautiful. Here it's made with a gray earth. But it's also possible to polish it with a polishing machine and to have this granito terrazzo effect. So then all the gravels that you have from the recycled concrete, sometimes you also have pieces of bricks inside, become visible, and it's very, very beautiful. It's also perfectly possible to integrate some floor heating inside. The minimum thickness of this type of slab that are not structural is 8 centimeters. And then here's some design elements. Here, for example, it's a stool made of rammed earth. So you see you can do on all the possible scale with that material. And then this last slide that I want to show is we really believe that earth is a very, very interesting materials. As you can see, one of the there is already norms in order to be using it. It's affordable. The only thing that it's very annoying for the moment is that no one's really know that material. So what we do is that we organize a lot of workshops. I think we organize one workshop almost every 2 weeks in order to explain how is it to work with earth. We do workshop for architects, but also for contractors. More and more contractors want to stop using those materials that gypsum and materials that are not healthy at all. And so we train a lot of contractors in order to use those materials. So if you wants to join one of our workshop, follow our Facebook or Instagram on LinkedIn, and then we always post all the workshops we're organizing. And of course, if you want to join the postgraduate, you will definitely be playing with the earth with us.
I'm Stefan. I will talk to you today about the Sonian Wood Coop that I'm a co-founder and member of. So we are creating lots of different things with local wood from the Sonian forest. So for those of you who are not familiar with the topography of Brussels and its surroundings, here's a little satellite image. So we work very much around Brussels. So we do kind of peri-urban mining, if you want. We operate in a radius of 35 kilometers around the Grote Markt, the Grand Place of Brussels. And why 35 kilometers? Because if you see here in this radius, you have all of the Sonian forest, which is a large peri-urban forest to the south and the southeast of Brussels. This this is kind of the territory. You have a big city in the middle, and you have a large peri-urban forest, which is mostly publicly managed. So it's more than 10,000 hectares of publicly managed forests within this radius of our operations. So the big city imports a lot of wood. So these 58,000 tons per year. Most of it's construction wood, but there's also several big wholesalers of different kinds of wood being used in furniture making and staircases and cladding and that sort of thing. Some colleagues of mine from the university, they also calculated the stock of wood. So in the buildings of Brussels, and they came up with something like 3,900 kilotons of wood that is already, in the stock, probably something that Rotor can chew over the next years. So our initiative of the Sonian Wood Coop is a bit similar to what has happened over the last 10 years in agriculture, where I think consumers and the city in general has become kind of more conscious and aware of where food comes from, and has developed an interest of working closer with farmers closer from here. Sorry, somewhere. Bonjour. Je suis en train de donner une conférence, j'ai encore 10 minutes. Excusez-moi. Ça va? Merci. Sorry about that. The security came. So here we have the kind of the parallel in the wood sector. So for a very long time, people are using wood in Brussels without ever questioning the origin of that material. So kind of on the assumption that wood is something sustainable, wood is good, but where that particular piece of wood comes from is something that for a very long time hasn't been questioned, and we kind of translating kind of the concepts and the market mechanisms of local agriculture to local forestry by developing a short circuit economy, linking this forest resource that we have. And it is really quite a substantial resource. There's a lot of wood being produced by the management of these forests, and linking that up to the city. This is something that resonates a lot in Brussels. So for those of you who are not kind of familiar, the Sonian forest is something that is very close to the heart of people in Brussels, because it's a very beautiful forest, and it's a very important resource for people that want to get to nature very quickly. And there's a second second element of the story, that most of this wood is currently being exported to China. Which kind of was like when we started communicating about this, was kind of very surprising and very shocking also to a lot of people, that we have this resource just in front of our eyes, and when the trees come down because they reach the end of their lives, they're being exported to the other end of the world, and then maybe come back as furniture. So the media. So when we as a cooperative started to say, let's build a local economy around this resource and link the Sonian forest to the kind of the making the making community in Brussels. The media picked up the story in a big way, and it's a very it's a very good narrative for the media to say, okay, it used to go to China, and now these young kids show up and try to do something more local with the wood. And so this kind of also helped us to gain a lot of support from the citizens, but also from institutions and from investors, because it is a quite capital intensive operation to buy the wood, to make the transformations, and to be able to set up the whole value chain. So this is kind of like a very schematic presentation of the value chain. So it goes from forest management on one end to the end user using an object in wood. And in between, there's a lot of different steps, different professions, different skills, different types of machinery that you need in order to make this happen. We kind of within the cooperative. We do everything between the forestry operations. So really, like going into the forest, taking the wood out. We mill the wood in sawmills. We do the first and secondary transformation of the wood, and we also produce our own lines of products with it. So this is kind of like a bit of a kind of an abstract way to show the value chain, and we wanted to drive this home in a bit more personal way. So we asked a photographer to make portraits of the different people that intervene in this value chain, to just to say that it's also about people, it's about connections, it's about skills and opportunities of having these people around, of having a network that makes it possible to still work wood on a local basis. So just a few images to show you kind of this value chain in in a more personal way. So this is Dirk. He's a very important guy for us because he's kind of a very experienced lumberjack. He has worked for 3 decades in this forest around Brussels, and he was very frustrated that kind of it's really high quality wood for most of it. It's wood that has been, like, I like the impression of Lionel about embodied culture. Like the Sonian forest is a culture that has been planted. It's not a kind of a natural forest. It's a beech forest that has been planted tree by tree, and for several generations, people have pruned the trees so they grow straight to make carpentry grade wood out of it, and then 2 centuries later we kind of export that to the other end of the world and don't use it. So people like Dirk were like very aware of what is happening and very frustrated about the situation. So when the cooperative started, like he came up with this chainsaw and said, like, I can help you, and I have a bit of wood that I cut every now and then that I kept myself because I didn't want to let it go. And this is also, some of the wood that we started with the cooperative. Then there's people like Benjamin, who is like really on the other end of the chain. So he's a carpenter. He has been working in Brussels, like in a lot of renovation projects, a lot of kind of these organic food shops. So he did a lot of interior design and interior furniture as a carpenter. And basically, things started to take off when Benjamin and Dirk kind of, ping-ponged and discussed together how the 2 ends of the chain could enter into some kind of a dialogue, because this is kind of I think the key point that was missing. Like the consumers of wood in Brussels were not able to directly talk to the beginning of the supply chain. And that's very important because there's a big gap in terms of time. So if you cut a tree and you saw it, it can be several years until you can use it. And so the producers of wood have to know what the clients want with a few years time gap. So you really have to have a very close and like a very good understanding of what the market needs, not to make mistakes that you only discover in 2 or 3 years. Then other people are very important that maybe don't spring to the mind directly when you talk about the wood value chain, are people like Aria, who is a designer based in Brussels. She also did a lot of designs with reclaimed wood, and she also works with our wood for different projects now. And like Aria is like, yeah, I mean, this for us is very essential to also tap into kind of the creativity and the access to a lot of different products, a lot of different markets where people like Aria are often kind of the driving force or even the gatekeepers to getting access to certain clients or certain applications. So it's a very essential part for us, for our network, to be able to not only talk to the carpenters and the lumberjacks, but also the conceptual and the creative energy that you have in Brussels. I also want to show you an image of Celine, who is an architect, who helps us a lot about like this very difficult topic about norms and integrating, for example, structural wood. To produce structural wood was kind of challenge for us, because we don't have the operational or industrial scale to do very standardized things. So for us, it's really tree by tree. We analyze every tree for the best purpose that we can give to it. But in the end, if you want to use wood, at least in a structural way in a building, obviously you have to respect a lot of norms and a lot of ways to verify the characteristics of the material, and people like Celine help us to. And then there's of course the maker. So I picked here Hugh, who is the bearded carpenter who is using the wood to build stuff here in Brussels. So there's really a lot of people like Hugh. Fortunately, we found out who don't operate at the big scale, who have their thing going, who produce custom-made furniture for themselves or for a small client base. Some of them are professional, some of them do it on the weekend, but it's really kind of really feel that there's a renaissance of kind of people who want to work with their hands, who want to make a living with something that makes sense, etc. So this is also an important part of our network, obviously. So here's some impressions of how this looks like kind of in practice. So it's a very big span. So from forest to final product, we really go into the forest, measuring the trees, estimating the volume of a tree that is marked to be felled by the authorities. So here in the middle, you have these visits with the forest guard who explains why a certain tree has to be felled, how it should be felled in order to keep things safe, etc. Then you have the milling. So sometimes you work with mobile sawmills directly in the forest. Sometimes we send the wood to very specialized sawmills for certain applications. And then you obviously have also the meeting with clients, the deliveries, big clients, small clients, and that sort of thing. So it's a very versatile activity, a lot of different encounters every day with people of different walks of life and different interests. And the biggest motivation, I think, for us is afterwards to see what comes out of it. So it is quite a responsibility, I think, to work with such old trees and such beautiful trees, and to see that afterwards it's not being used as toothpicks or firewood or something, but really something that that also respects kind of the value of the raw material. So here's kind of a selection of stuff that has been produced with this Sonian wood, so which is mostly beech wood. So it's a lot of interior applications, such as tables and small elements of kitchen furniture. we also have some pine wood or larch wood that you can use also for applications outside. So here, for example, we built this sheep stable with pine wood. We created like planters out of larch, and somebody made even musical instruments out of a local beechwood here. So our base is in Anderlecht. We have a workshop. The Circularium is the address. Feel free to drop by. As soon as the sanitary situation allows it, we'll have a lot of barbecues and a lot of events over there. We're really looking forward to have a bit more outsiders as well. Like now we do a lot of B2B, but we're eager also to show like to the general public that it's possible to work with local wood and what you can do with the local material. Yeah, so this is how it looks like. Final remark. So now, like I talked a lot about Brussels, and it seems to be like a very specific story that we have this big market, this maker community, and the peri-urban forests around. But local forestry is really something that is happening in a lot of different cities, and it's really gaining traction. So we're in touch with a lot of different initiatives, kind of around the world that often have an urban core because that's where the demand is, and that's where also you can create the value. But it really, you know, a lot of people work with street trees, with trees from parks, if they don't have peri-urban forests. So there's initiatives and a lot of initiatives in the Netherlands, in the UK, in Italy, and obviously in North America, where you know, this kind of what we are doing has been going on, I think, for at least 15 years in Canada and the US. And a lot of these initiatives, when they start, they make cutting boards. So almost all of them, like the first thing that you do with wood, if you want to show, like give feeling of what wood looks like and have like an easy product, you do cutting boards. So it's a very it's a bit of an insider joke. They all have their cutting boards. They all brand them in the same way. They try to find a shape that reflects a bit the local associations. And whenever we meet with an initiative, like here we met with somebody from Antwerp, who also does local wood from city trees in Antwerp, and he came with his cutting board, and we gave him our cutting board. So it's kind of local wood diplomacy that you have going on between these different cities. So that's for me. This is these are our links. I hope I could grasp a bit this very deep topic for me. Like, I'm really passionate about local wood, and I'm looking forward to make you maybe interested in gaining more insights about how this is happening in practice.
Thank you, Stefan. I would like to invite, you can leave your camera on, because I would like to invite Nicolas and Stefan and Lionel for a question session. We are running a little. We actually wanted to stop at 9 o'clock, but it would be really a pity to leave out the question sessions because we had a lot of questions. Lionel, you put your camera on. That makes it...
yeah, just 1 minute.
Yeah, nicer to talk. I propose, well, I don't think we will be able to, or you won't be able to answer all these questions. But I would like to start with a few questions for each of you individually. And then we have a few questions which might be relevant for all of you. First, I would like to start with Lionel, with Rotor. Well, there is one is about who is taking the initiative for dismantling or these buildings, and one question from Harold is, are all owners or promoters of building receptive when you ask them to dismantle and keep the materials? And so then I think he assumes that you are the initiative taker, or who is actually initiating this process if you know that a building will be demolished? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. In the beginning, we had to take the initiative very often and to go and try to convince building owners to get access to the building before the work starts, and we basically dismantled the materials with our own teams. And now the situation evolved, and in a way that we the initiative comes a lot more from the building owner themselves or from the contractors. So we can focus on the work of preparing the materials, storing them, selling them, but the dismantling work and the initiative is often done by the people active on the sites. So it's becoming a lot more collaborative than before.
Yeah, and I saw one question, but I don't find it now. It was, who is actually then paying for the dismantling cost? Is this the original owner, or is it the one who is wanting to use the materials? Or isn't that so simple?
in an ideal world, it would be the owner of the building of origin. So if a proper deconstruction was a standard way to tear down a building, then it would be logic to take this on the demolition budget. But today the expectation still exists that the buyer should pay for at least a part of the extra efforts, because somehow in the mind of the people, the destructive demolition remains the benchmark, and they compare the costs of a soft dismantling as to this standard scenario. So they see it as an extra budget they have to pay.
Yeah, because there was a question I had myself. Are they always willing to accept? Well, I assume that it takes more time to do it in, like you said, the soft dismantling than just demolish it. Mm-hmm. And I assume this is also go for them mostly with the costs. But of course, is that something easy for them to accept? Is extra time that?
Yeah, it's, on one hand, time is essential for the building industry, but on the other time, a lot of time, on the other hand, a lot of time is being lost anyway in every building project. So you always have long moments of nothing happening, and so if you organize things in a way that you can make use of this moments of vacancy or just this moments where nothing happened, then you can save materials without impacting the timing or not too much. So it's often we have to find ways to make it acceptable.
Yeah. And then Pamela asks, what she said, what I understand is that it's simpler to reclaim materials that are already a product of a system. You also mentioned that you mostly do finishing materials. And so she's wondering how would you deal with other materials like bricks or concrete? Mm-hmm. Would it be possible or to reclaim them too, or...
Yeah, with Rotor DC, we decided to focus on finishing materials, mostly coming from large buildings from the 20th century, large urban buildings. But we are not alone. So in Belgium, we know around 100 other companies active in the trade of salvaged materials. And bricks is an interesting segment of this market. So in Belgium, you have more than 10 or 20 companies who are reclaiming bricks and preparing them for reuse. So it can perfectly be done. Well, for bricks that were originally installed with the lime-based mortar,
Yeah, so from really old buildings, not from the recent ones.
Yeah, indeed. And until the 50s, 60s, it was usual to use a calc-based mortar. And then, yeah, only from the 60s, 70s, the Portland cement became widespread. And then, yeah, you cannot separate your bricks anymore. They are just glued in your walls. So there's nothing to do with it anymore. At least not through reuse.
Yeah. Well, I would like to go now to Nicolas. There were quite some technical questions. A lot of people were interested in a lot of technical aspects of working with rammed earth or raw earth. One is from Thomas, where he says that you said that you also use recycled gravel from concrete. Isn't there the risk that the cement present in this recycled gravel that this could change the clay, and so that actually it's
reusable anymore?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, because actually in the beginning, so when the motor is making this recycled crushed concrete, is making actually they're making two fractions, 0.6 millimeter and a 6 to 22 millimeters. And the 0.6 is full of this cement dust. And in the beginning, we were using that also, and then we discovered that it was quite annoying also, because it was the cement is not completely desactivated, because of course normally cement works only one time, and then actually when it's crushed, it's dead cement. It's already been, but even with this dust sometimes it's reactivated, so we decided to not use that one anymore. So we replaced that part by river sand for certain materials that we do, very small percentage. But the 622, this gravel is really perfect. There is a little bit of dust of cement in it, but definitely that doesn't make any chemical reaction in the bricks or in the rammed dirt, that we would have not this value of this fantastic thing of being able to reuse it after that.
Yeah. I saw a lot of questions popping up once you showed the watchtower, because I had the impression that because of the size and the height, this really made people wonder what is all possible with rammed earth. So Pedro asked if there was an inner structure in the tower, or is the rammed earth itself load bearing?
So the rammed dirt is half load bearing, not because it was needed for the structure, because we could have been doing with only rammed dirt. So for the moment you have rammed dirt on the outside, 80 centimeter wall, and on the inside a concrete wall of I think 15 or 20 centimeters. And so the levels where the staircase goes is leaning on both walls, but it's not due. We didn't do it in the architect and the structural engineer didn't decided to do it, the structure, the inner core in concrete, because of structure, but just because of cost. The biggest problem we face now with rammed dirt is that it's way too expensive, because there is so much craft involved. It's, I think in Belgium we are around 600 euros the square meters, so it's a beautiful expensive craft, and so that's the reason that we only did the outside walls, and I think there was also this question about the Eurocodes. That one. Well, for rammed dirt, indeed, there is no norms, but structural engineers decide. We always decide for calculating rammed dirt to use the Eurocode 5 for masonry, taking, for example, a safety factor of 5 compared to the compressive strength of the materials. But it's with earth. It's really easy to go quite high. To give you an idea, if you have unstabilized earthen bricks of rammed earth or whatever, you get really easily 1 to 2 MPa, megapascal. It's true that cement-based materials or fired bricks have 10 to 20 times better values. That's true, more performance. But if you look to a house with 2-story high, you will maybe need 0.2 MPa with even sacred factors of 5. Of course, it's depending on the design. I just give you a general idea. But anyway, we are using actually high carbon materials for certain things that are overkill. It's completely not necessary to overkill structures. And so earth is for a lot of purposes good enough, structural or non-structural. That's definitely doable.
Yeah, then there's a question from Rune who was asking, was also something I was wondering about, to which extent this excavated earth will be available in the future. He says, well, will the amount of excavated earth will this decrease in the future if things like the beton stop, Baushift, building shift, concrete stop, what they are planning to to initiate by 2040, will this have an impact on these materials, and also on, for me it's also on which kind of scale do you see this possible? Will it always be a kind of niche way of building, or do you aim for extending this to a larger scale?
I think there is, mankind was building all the time. Is, of course, we have a demographic boom now where we actually are building a lot. But when you see the numbers for the moment in Belgium, it's crazy. I mean, just for Brussels, 2 million tons of earth. I think for other cities like Paris, it's around 20 million tons of earth every year. Just to give you an idea, now we are not at full capacity of production with BC Material. I would say we are third capacity, and we do 300 tons a year of earth.
so the potential is still huge.
The potential is so huge. There is so much earth, and then it's not counting also the big infrastructure work. Just to give you an idea, with the subway line that will be done between Schaerbeek and the city center, it will be millions of tons that will be excavated, and no one knows what we're gonna do and how much it's gonna cost actually to get rid of all this clay, sands, and all perfectly usable resources. And so what's probably is going to happen is that they will end in landfills, being mixed with other type of soil. So it will be even more difficult. Imagine that you want to reuse in a certain future those earth, because it's going to be mixed with different type of soil.
Yeah, it will be polluted.
It's not polluted, but
not polluted, but I mean it's not virgin anymore.
It will not be homogeneous anymore, so it will make the work more complicated to reuse it. So it's a bit a pity, of course. There is no real management, let's say, for the moment of thinking, okay, we have clay soil, so let's make a quarry only with type of clays that we're going to be filling, because maybe in a certain future we will re-dig it because we need it. That's not happening for the moment. No, it's the cheapest place where you can dump your earth. It's the cheapest way where it goes.
And then Laura is asking if it's still a circular material when you add recycled concrete. Is it something that, well, does the mixture that you make remain afterwards if you would deconstruct the building or?
Yeah, definitely. I think yes, because it's like I said, that there is no chemical action in the material, so you can. If you disaggregate the brick or the wall that you made, you will have exactly the same grain composition that you will have before. There will not be chemical binding in between recycled concrete pebbles and the clay and the sand. So it's definitely doable.
Yeah, and then there's a question I think a lot of people think about this, the durability and how durable is a ramped floor? Can it be used in public spaces, and how does it react with water or with shoes coming from outside? So,
well, earth is of course a more it's a material that is mostly being used for inside. I would say definitely rendered floor. You cannot use it outside. That's for sure. If it's durable, I think yes. It's just that you have to see how you use it in a public building. Yes, but taking certain consideration. I would compare it a little bit like, with a nice wooden floor. Because sometimes clients ask, is it possible to put ram dirt in my kitchen? Well, I always say, would you put a nice wooden floor in your kitchen? And some people said, no, if I will drip some oil, then it's going to be, and others said, yeah, of course, I always, and then it's a bit this thing, is as fragile and as strong also as oak. And so you need to,
if you like the patina, that is by using it.
But don't put it in your garage and driving with your car on it. So no, that's not working.
Then the question for you, Stefan, how much wood does the Sonian forest produce on a yearly basis, and do you already use all this wood locally, and maybe is that is that your ambition in the future, or is it still partly exported?
Just switch on my mic again.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question. The numbers are really quite amazing. I mean, maybe not as amazing as for the wood, where you talk about millions and millions, but we talk about tens of thousands of cubic meters per year that are being produced, being harvested, and at our scale. So if you say we have 10,000 cubic meters per year being produced, this year we harvested around 700 for our purposes, and the remaining fraction would to 80-85% be exported to China. So that's where we are now. And in terms of our ambitions, we want to grow organically, and the idea is not to have thousands of cubic meters right away. But I think there is really quite a big potential of capturing at least 2/3 of the production of the forest for the uses of the metropolitan area of Brussels.
Yeah, well, I have a question for you, all of you. What I noticed from what you were telling is that apparently you all have a kind of company model where you combine design, research, and then selling materials locally, harvested or mined materials. Is this for you, in your idea, an important model to make the circular economy work in the building industry or the building sector, or is it just a coincidence that you all three have this kind of combined expertise?
We are just copying whatever they're doing, huh?
Okay. Okay. So now you know that.
I don't know if it's specific about circular economy, but if you want to do something new, I mean, you have to also explain, and you have to do the research and have prototypes and examples. And I think that's why it's important for us to also do things ourselves and do the research and the design as well. Because right now, and this is why I think also something similar about reclaimed materials and earth. Right now, just the standard practice is so different that people have to be kind of dragged a bit and being presented with the possibility that yes, it's possible, and that's something that we to a large extent still have to push ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And Nicolas or Lionel?
Yeah. I think also, because it feels for us a bit as pioneering work, instead that we would like to and that's, we are a cooperative, so we wrote also in our statute that we want to bring that earth and material back to a growing market and not in this niche. And in order to do that, we have to extend the volumes of doing projects and doing bigger projects. But in order to do that, we see that it's not by just building a factory where you can push on the button and being able to transform 1 million ton of earth in so many bricks, because we see that even if we could have that subsidized and having this factory working, no one's going to buy the blocks. So there is so much work to do of recreating this culture of what is building with dirt and how do you use it, updating it also. We're talking about norms, but we're also talking about new materials, how to combine it with wood, with other with all the possible materials, rethinking building up. So it's a lot of things to do, and this is what we see, that we have to work on all those levels at the same time. We cannot choose only one. We cannot choose only to go into the technology and saying, okay, let's do 3D printing because that's going to be the solution for Earth. No, that could be one of the solution technology, but next to that we have to do workshops. Next to that we have to do research because we have to understand better the Earth. Next to that we have to work on the norms, and it's a lot of stuff in order to just advance like a few steps further, but it's needed. For us, it feels like that.
Mm-hmm. And Lionel, for you?
Well, the answers of Stefan were, I don't know if I have to add something to these answers. They were really really nice. On our side, it's the same. The situation we have now is that Rotor consists somehow in different departments, even if it's not that formal as real departments in a company, but there are a lot of exchanges. I mean, the work we do with Rotor DC in selling materials is instructing the work our colleagues do in design projects. What we learn through design projects, we can use it in advice or consultancy missions, and back. And this content is also something we can feed in the research. So it's, for us at the moment, it's a fantastic way to go forward. But I wouldn't say it's a prerequisite to in order to do something in the field.
Because Nicolas, you called it nicely, the recreating a culture, and this reminds me of what both Stefan said and you also, Lionel, that actually you are all recreating a culture that existed long before, like reusing materials. Lionel, like you showed in the old ancient documents, and Stefan, you said, well, all these trees were planted with the idea in mind to be used locally. So it's in fact really a recreation of a culture that, and maybe also an expertise that we all have been forgotten. Yeah. And I'm wondering, you all three work and are located in an urban context, at the context of Brussels. Is there, well, a lot of traditional companies aim to grow, and you also said, Nicolas, you don't want to be or to remain in a niche, but is there a kind of ideal scale for this kind of companies to work and in this urban context, or not necessarily? Do you also want to remain local in the building, so then to keep the materials locally, or can it be everywhere? I don't know, Lionel, if you can maybe start. Is there kind of scale that you're aiming for, or that is most workable or feasible, or?
Yeah, in our case, we often feel the paradox of wanting to have such an activity that requires huge surfaces and wanting to be in an urban context. It's just something that is hard to combine. Most of the other companies we know active in the reclamation of building materials, they are located well in the hinterland of cities or in the countryside or in these industrial zones, because the ground is cheap, so you can just store more and use the surface more easily. But for us, distance, because our project grew in an urban context and for the urban context. So we that's something that is important to us. And it's also a question that is very important today, because we well in 2022 we'll need to move to find another place to settle, and we are completely working on it, actually, together with BC and Sonian.
Yeah. This might be the project for the postgraduate. And Nicolas, what about you, about BC?
Yeah, I think it's something that BC is struggling always in the sense of what scale do we want to get. The thing is that it's not BC materials that want to grow from a niche to a building market. It's earth and culture, the culture of building with earth, that we want to move from this niche to a growing market. So actually, we don't really want, or we're not really sure that if we want to do everything ourselves, or if we just want to show the path, and then helping bigger companies in order to if the market is there and ready, in order to take over certain products. I mean, making bricks, that's could be something that could be done in a lot of places. Imagine, I mean, in Belgium we have a brick in our stomach, we say. So we have actually those old brick factory almost everywhere in every small villages. All those brick factories, they could be really easily been modified in order to not bake anymore, or to bake and not bake, and to produce unfired bricks. So it's a way of delocalizing a lot of different bricks factory, like what they do with concrete also. You know, you have only 101 minutes in order to get concrete to the construction site. So we have concrete plants almost everywhere in the world in order to get the truck as fast as possible. Well, I think for Earth, that could be the scale, small, but a bit everywhere.
Yeah. And for Sonian wood, you have a kind of scale in mind, or?
Yeah, I mean, for us, I think there's a very obvious physical limit, which is the carrying capacity of the ecosystem. So there is, like, from the beginning, like, we started not with a growth path, but more with a limit in mind. It can't be bigger than the production of the forest per year. So there is a management plan which kind of forecasts the quantities that are produced for the next 20 to 30 years for the different regions. So there's an upper limit. But there's also a lower limit, I think, because if you're too small, like it's just very, very complicated to produce like an economically feasible offer to the market. So you have to have a certain scale, but you can't be too big. And for this kind of, we're still navigating to fix these lower and upper thresholds, but they're definitely very real, So it's very different from like a conventional company, I think, where sky's the limit and as fast as possible, and so we are more we are within two boundaries that we can more or less fathom if we go forward.
Yeah. Okay. There are still a lot of questions unanswered, both in the chat and I myself also still have questions, but we are already, I think, half an hour over what the time that we planned. So I would propose to close it here. And I really would like to thank you all for being here, for giving this lecture. I think it was really appreciated by our audience, and yeah, we're looking forward to work with the three of you next year in the postgraduates.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks everybody for listening.
Thank
Have a nice
you.
evening.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.